Hi, Lubna.
Hi, Hawa. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And I'm excited as usual, but about today's topic. Um, and I think it's just a natural continuation from our last conversation, which, a lot of it was offline, but I think we're bringing now some aspects of it online by highlighting the question of agency and free will and choice when it comes to women. And this is like a very high level kind of overview of what we're gonna talk about.
Mhm.
But maybe it would be helpful for whoever is listening, for us to explain a little bit why we are talking about this topic, like what prompted us
Yeah,
to think in those terms, the specifically about agency for women in terms of what choice looks like and whether there's even an agreement that a choice has a unified definition.
agreed. So I'm not attempting to be careful in how I express some of the reasons why we thought this made sense to go into this for this episode or this topic. But yeah, I think, we've had our conversations and our experiences in regards to our spiritual path, and how it in some ways is different from the sort of the religion that we were born into. And how, I've had conversations with friends or people who have chosen, interestingly enough, to leave the faith that they were born into, which I think is a very
Mm,
interesting topic because um, I'm noticing a trend. I think a lot of people in our generation across the world are questioning a variety of different ideologies, one of which is religion, which is so pervasive and really dominates many cultures, even secular ones, I would say. I think I'm born and raised in the United States. This is an incredibly Christian country in many ways, especially when you leave the coasts. Like we have a whole region called the Bible Belt, you know? So, yeah, just thinking about these conversations I've been having recently with a few people and how, why they've left their faith, why they're still in it, why they struggle but don't want to leave it, or whatever it is. And then it going into that sort of topic, as you know, to Lubna about like agency, choice, like free will, right? I know people in my life who are of a certain religious background that really struggle with the belief. Like the belief is not there. It's just not in.
mm-mm, mm,
They're just kind of going with the motions. And religion is just one example. I think it can be,
right.
well, I think it's ideology, to be honest with you. I think I'm just making it a bit more personal for us to sort of give context. But yeah, like, or even if you deviate, even if you stick with that faith, but sort of slightly deviate in a different direction, it's like, oh my God, right? So it's like, yeah, it just made me think, and especially, I do think we need to talk about the gender element of it, right? Because I think there are much more consequences for women in almost all societies. I think that's like across the board. In some, it might be literally violent, but sometimes that violence happens in the West too, trust me. So,
Right.
yeah, it just made me think in general, just the topic of free will and agency and what does that mean, the gender element of it, the social conditioning of it. Um, and yeah, and then it just made me think, okay, like what is even free will? What is choice?
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes back to some earlier conversations we had years ago, I think when we first met, really,
Yeah.
and we were exploring our own spiritual paths. And the question of choice came up in a religious context because we, the very dominant debate in many Western countries about specifically, women dressed in certain clothing from certain religions, let's say Islam, and if they wear the niqab or the hijab in certain public spaces, whether that should be allowed or not allowed. And I know that was big in France and Europe and more generally. And I think we were talking within that context and to, I guess, personalize it from my side, being having been raised in the Middle East and an ultra conservative country in the Middle East, I've always questioned what free choice is,
Yeah.
because I've seen my friends that grew up in very conservative, religiously conservative environments, and their expected ways of doing things, like in many other very conservative environments, and they tend to be, quite oppressive. And when it comes to free choice,
Mhm.
there are very limited options, really. And everyone's expected to perform in a certain way, whether man or woman. But when it comes to women, the question was about the clothing and the hijab and the niqab and whether they're wearing it out of free choice or is just what it's expected. And they could, in theory, rebel, resist, and reject, but the cost is extremely high for women that are coming from those environments. And it could start from simply being outcasted by the family. And I call it simply because it can go all the way to the extreme of, violence and murder,
Yeah.
really, if they don't align with the ideology that their culture think should be applied to them. So that left me always, because I'm observing them. My family was not conservative, neither religiously nor culturally in any possible way, but we just happened to live in that environment. So I was really a fly on the wall watching the struggles of my friends as they hit puberty. And let me qualify, like specify female friends. So we're talking
Yeah.
about girls, women, young women at that point, struggling a lot, making that transition from just childhood, girlhood to womanhood, early womanhood, and all these expectations become all of a sudden more severe and more demanding, specifically on their bodies and how what they should hide and what they should show, and there's a very clear playbook. And any deviation could be explained in extreme terms, and they would bear the consequences. So, and I think I come from me coming from that environment, and you being born and raised in New York, New Jersey, still, kind of you have exposure to perhaps maybe more diverse cultural and religious communities as opposed to my experience. But then that's what started the debate that is, or like conversation
Yeah.
that is now 10 years old about what is free choice. And I remember my point then and today is it's just that I don't think these women have much choice. And when I say these women, like there's variation, but like for a woman who is born and raised in a very ultra conservative religious environment,
Yeah.
and that's one type of ideology. I know we're talking about, different types of free choices, but if we focus now on the ideology and sub kind of division, which is religion, the choices are limited, the consequences are extremely high, and the cost is extremely high if they choose an option that is outside the parameters within which they're allowed to operate. And the parameters are extremely narrow, tight, and limited. So really, they're choosing, no one is physically forcing them.
Yeah.
Implicitly, impliedly, culturally, there is that force. And I guess I'm gonna leave it there. It's just that I think that's the historical background to the conversation. I wonder also if we want to talk about how our conversation has evolved around that topic. Because
Definitely.
yeah, yeah, couple, sorry, I'll leave it there. But like one last point about like
Go,
2 days
go
ago
ahead.
when we were yeah, I feel like I can't keep
No, I
on.
love it. No, no, no. Go. Please continue.
But because we were talking about our friends, you met a
Yeah.
friend recently, I met a close friend recently. Both of our friendships each lasted at least now, or it's been lasting for 15 plus years.
Yeah.
And we've seen the evolution of their lives and the joys and the struggles and all of it. And I think both of us connected on the topic of us seeing certain struggles in these friends' lives
Mhm.
that revolve around the free choice, and whether they really have it, and them coming to terms coming to terms with their current life and the options that are available to them.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And I think, I want to also add my historical sort of experience with this as well, given that I was born, like you were saying, yes, I grew up with all different types of cultures. So I grew up in a predominantly white community. I did not grow up around Somalis. I did not grow up around Muslims. I didn't grow up around any other immigrants, if I'm being frank. Like I was really just plopped into sort of white suburbia in the Jersey suburbs. And so for me, I think what I felt was that in my young self, my young, passionate, naive self, was that, well, there are two things, right? Outside of like my religion and my cultural upbringing in my home, right? Because I grew up in a very Somali, interestingly enough, very,
Mm,
but my parents were, yeah, not conservative, but very religious, if that makes sense, right? Like they weren't, traveled a lot as a kid. They were always valuing education. It was a very free environment that I grew up in. Um, but they were very devout, pray 5 times a day, but they were very chill. Like there was a lot of faith and trust. And I think an element of is that generation that they grew up in as Somalis, was very lax. And, the Muslims back then were almost Sufi, and now they're all kind of
yeah.
Wahhabi, unfortunately. So it's a lot more extreme and very sort of that Islamic fundamentalism post the war sort of influenced the culture now. But I didn't grow up with that, you know what I mean? It was very different.
Mm,
It was very chill, like a lot of Africans are, I think, like very similar to Senegalese or West African, or just they were chill. And even if we were
mm,
religious, but like I was never required to wear the hijab. I had no pressure. I went to school in Chicago. Like that's just not the environment I, grew up in, which is very much a blessing. And so what I saw was like these two things, right? So I saw choice where I saw, yeah, all these sort of American women or American girls had much more freedom than I had in some ways.
mm,
My mindset was still very, in some ways, like morally conservative, which was fine. But anyway, in terms of choice, yeah, I didn't think about choice in that way from a religious perspective. It was very political. I looked at
mm,
choice from like, why don't I have the same rights as a man? Like for me, it was all
mm,
rooted in a general sense of feminine, like it was oriented around sort of what Western liberal feminism. It was not religious I wasn't thinking in terms of religion yet. I really wasn't. Just because that wasn't the environment I grew up in, right? I grew up in the house, it was different. And I didn't see my choices being really limited
mm,
at that time, particularly as a young person
mm,
compared to my peers. But for me, choice was all around the rights of women from a political
mm,
perspective. I was really in that sort of headspace. It wasn't until I got older when I met you that I was starting to question choice on a much more deeper, different level, connected to the faith I was born into. Living in New York City for almost 10 years and seeing different types of groups of people and not trying and understanding, you know, like, okay, particularly around Muslim women, I would see women in niqabs or burqas in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, young girls, teenagers on the subway.
mm,
Um, and just choice in terms of women's choices around the relationships. Choice, like it became this
mm,
broader thing. It was really more of a philosophical trying to
mm,
understanding, like you don't have to be in this particular situation if you don't want to be, connecting it to childhood, connecting it to social conditioning. So that was very much my background and my not understanding, but sort of my initial sort of
mm,
feelings about free will and choice and how it sort of changed to sort of where you're at now. But I think that's two really stark examples that are great because I think we're kind of coming to the middle now, but it just shows how, to me, that just
mm,
confirms how social conditioning really impacts your ability to even think you have a choice, right? But then also how I disagree with you, and then in the sense I do believe we have a choice. I think we acquiesce because of the sort of social pressure. I still think the choice is there. I really do. I think
I
there are
mean,
serious because my feeling is, Lubna, there are women in the Middle East who have managed to get out of difficult home environments. There are women who in Somalia who have left and lived the life, or in Somalia that are making choices that are difficult and they do it. There are women making choices in America, like, so I don't know. I've always been inspired. That solidifies my belief that choice, you do have a choice and we do have free will. And more people have shittier circumstances that make it difficult to recognize that or do anything. But there are people who figured it out. So that's why
Actually,
it's choice.
I think we agree on that point.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
absolutely, yeah, yeah, I absolutely, I think that in absolute value, in absolute terms, choice is always there. Always.
yeah.
Like, yes, everyone has choice. And it's, in principle, it is a free choice. You can make that move, decision, specifically those women not to wear the niqab or to leave the home or to migrate somewhere else.
Not even
They
with
can.
hijab, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, like,
yeah. But I guess, and this is more the realism or the realistic kind of, or realist in me. Um, when the cost is so high, when it's so prohibitive, is it really a choice? Now, not like in philosophical, you know, kind of
yeah.
linguistic terms. And we're talking in real world, is this even a choice? When, for example, you not wearing the hijab means your brother is gonna kill you. You know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Is that really a choice? You don't even speak another language. Or how are you gonna file the papers to immigrate somewhere else? What are you gonna do there if you barely have like you have a high school degree or you went to like some third tier university in a country that you're not competitive enough if you want to, let's say, immigrate to a more liberalized or liberal or open environment,
Yeah.
assuming it's a Western country because they have the immigration and the asylum seeking and those options. If we're thinking again of a woman moving from a more conservative, religiously more conservative environment in the Middle East, let's say.
Yeah.
So there are these routes. I'm my thinking is that when the cost is so high in terms of like violent retaliation or not even knowing how to execute on the choice, when there's a will, there's a way, sure. Um, but reaching that point, and even if, for example, she's not financially independent, and that's another topic or like
Yeah.
subtopic, and more financial independence and economic independence, and how does it shape the type of choices we have as women? But a lot of these women are not financially independent. And that's by design. Early on, there's such, resistance to them continuing their education or getting a more competitive degree. And now getting just a degree is not enough in today's economy, like
Yeah.
really. So, especially if we're talking about someone who's gonna immigrate to another country, um, as an asylum seeker, for example. So there are a lot of layers into this and preparation for someone to plan and to know that they want to exit this is they have to make the choice, the decision to exit their community and then to follow all these logistical administrative steps to prepare their exit safely and ensuring they're going to make it to the other side without anyone violently beating them up or killing them, which happens a lot.
Exactly.
So when I think of these things, that's when I cringe and I stop. I'm like, is that even a choice? Now, in contrast, and I think we talked
Yeah.
about that, about Muslim in more
Yeah. In the West.
legally, yes, in
Yeah.
a
Your
legally advanced
example is
societies.
valid. Like that is a realistic, that is a more difficult argument that I can make in terms of my belief that choice is real. Because I don't think I could say that to the women in Afghanistan right now, given the Taliban and all of the extreme sort of policies they have now towards women just breathing essentially in public spaces and not allowing that. So it's true. I mean, yeah, I think on a philosophical level, I'm always going to say that. But yeah, I think it's harder, significantly harder, um, for those women. I mean, I don't even think that's, yeah, I would agree with you. Um,
And I think what got us talking about this topic a lot is the Muslim women in the West, and the choice of wearing hijab or niqab or etc., etc.
yeah,
And
yes,
yes, and I think in that context, I would argue 100% they have pretty much a full choice.
Yeah.
Even if they are in a very conservative community, they can still, there's the power of the state.
Yeah, this exactly. Yeah.
They are aware of it. The state is present everywhere. The apparatus of the state, you can call the police. There are ways to be protected. But
Mm.
back in Middle East, the family supersedes the state, and
Yeah.
the state is gonna stand by the family, and the
Right.
policies are pretty much aligned with the family. So, you're screwed pretty much. Like if um so yeah, I mean free choice, and for the lack of like better way to define Western world, right?
Yeah.
Europe or US or whatever. Yeah, there's greater way to exercise free choice. Um it came at a cost historically, absolutely. And I personally am very grateful for all the women that
Yeah.
came
They
before
did
us
it.
because
Yeah.
they did it.
They,
I
there was,
mean,
they recognize, like, they fundamentally, I think all radical activists, revolutionaries, like, these people fundamentally knew, Harriet Tubman, like, people who fought for slavery, like, these people fundamentally knew, and it was a risk. I mean, I also think, right, you're right, there is a risk no matter what, but they fundamentally knew, but I have a right. I have a right to choose this different path. I don't have to subscribe to what society is telling me right now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I recognize the cost of that. And there are women in, the Middle East and Africa, whatever, who've died for that cost. They've equally
yeah,
pushed the needle because in the Middle
yeah.
East, in Saudi, in Qatar, in Kuwait, like I understand the family supersedes, but there is slow progress happening in some ways, Lubna, right? Compared to when you were,
I don't know if a progress is the word I would use. I would say
yeah,
more tension. I mean, maybe it's like there is one force moving in one direction
right,
because there's the overwhelming impact of modern influences, right? Social
yeah,
media, all of that. So
right,
this is like way above the pay grade of the state engineering any specific dogma or religion. No one can control how media is accessing people today. So younger generations are exposed to all of that. The school is not the only source of information anymore. So they have all of that coming in. And then you have the state and all the other authority institutions and figures and old establishment trying to engineer the worldview of the upcoming generations. But I say good luck with that. So there's a tension
yeah,
because it's not like just a smooth, natural, organic progression of
yeah,
like organic local values. A lot of it is that tension, and maybe it exists. I would say also some of that tension exists for the younger generations in Western countries as well. It's not, uh, like the whole debate around gender and what it means, or
yeah,
like you have really strong opinions on both ends in the US, and it's one of the most progressive and open countries,
right.
arguably. Um,
But the tension is
but
good. I think the tension is what pushes the potential progress. It can either go in a medieval direction or it can go in like a progressive direction. And it feels to me on a slow level, it's going, even if it's a bit superficial, like, but it's
yeah,
like they are being forced to make a different choice, whether they like it or not, because of the destabilization it could have to their power, right? Like in terms
yeah,
of outside influences. So yeah, so back to what I was saying about the United, like yeah, choice was always like I just think that's a good prime example of the choice is always there, and like
mm,
you're just there's going to be tension, but you kind of like yeah, it validates that there is choice, you have choice, but it will require a sacrifice. There is a risk involved in
mm,
right? And so that's why I kind of will always believe there's a choice no matter the society you live in, but it is going to be at an incredible risk potentially. And that risk varies depending on the society that you live in. But yeah, I think the fundamental benefit, listen, I'm from America, there's a lot. I'm not gonna put like any state on some pedestal. Like, you know what I'm saying? Every country
yeah,
has its issues. But I think back to what you're saying about all these women who've made these radicals, these people who've made these sort of sacrifices for us to even be debating this without any
yeah.
consequence.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what
The
I
mere
mean?
fact that we're talking about that
Yeah,
and this will go public tells you a
right.
lot about, the
Yeah,
work they've done to help us, to
exactly.
prepare us and help us for this moment.
Exactly. And then, so then my question becomes on a deeper level, which again goes back to this original conversation we had, is like, if America's a multicultural society, it's a liberal democracy, it's Western liberalism, right? So now that in 2025 we have choice, like let's just talk about the context of America, right? Because we live here. We have choice, but women still struggle. Many, many women still struggle with making a choice that deep down in their bones, they would love to live an alternate life. They would love to not believe what they were born into. They would love to, yeah, there's just these things I'm noticing, like,
What do you th why do you think this is the case? Why do you think they're still struggling despite the fact that they live in an environment that w one would argue is one of they're protected legally if they wanna exit
and
whatever
I'm
the
talking
current
about some women,
arrangement?
yeah, and I'm talking about women who are educated, like high level, like I'm not just talking about like really just because I think the patriarchy is still in us. You know what I mean? I think the idea of not being, not ruffling any feathers, not
Mm,
like being conditioned, by
mm.
families, by communities, by the church, by the mosque, by the synagogue, like by the
By the
Hindu, by
parents.
the
By the
parents.
parents.
Like just there's so many things where women are put under so much pressure, in a way that sons are not. Like, and I just, for the most part, like that's just a fact. So that any opportunity, like I've had, and I've suffered from this in some ways. It's just like this mental inability to question certain things out of sort of allegiance
Mm,
to family.
I'm getting
Allegiance
there.
to
So,
family.
because I have a theory on
Okay, go.
about what we No, I think it's the power of identity that
Yes,
is at play.
exactly.
Because it's almost denying everything else that comes with that package. It's not just the whatever that struggle. You said you know a lot of women that are struggling in a specific way. But if they are to exit that struggle, it means they're gonna let go of many of the things that come with it. And those things tend to be tied to their identity.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the real issue is. When the identity is so intertwined with the community, where the individual and the community, the line between the two is blurred. And hyper-conservative communities, from a culture or religious perspective, tend to favor that arrangement because they want the individual to serve the community so the community would thrive and so on. So I wonder if the woman you're thinking about tend to have that strong identification with a particular type of living, uh, and that, a particular community, a particular place, like there is that strong sense of belonging or allegiance.
Well, yeah, I think there's loss, like loss of family and some like, and I'm thinking of multiple women. I'm thinking of
Yeah, yeah.
women who are not religious at all, atheist background. Like I'm thinking about myself. I think it's just, yeah, I think, yeah, I think it's just a loss of familial ties,
Yeah,
even to
yeah.
some family members who are not deserving of that tie, interestingly enough, or like that's why I have a lot of respect for, and this is not applicable to me. I'm very close with my parents, I'm very close with my family. But like
Mm,
I think about people who go like no contact with family members. I think that's incredibly courageous and brave. They've made the choice to protect their peace, to protect, you know, to cut, because that's a really harsh, people view that as harsh. Like you can't, especially in Islamic culture, right? Like we've
oh,
talked about this, but
absolutely.
like your mother
It's
is never wrong.
unthinkable.
The mother is never wrong. The mother is
Yeah,
never wrong. And
yeah.
I've seen family members or family friends where I'm like, your mother is like wicked, like, and you don't have to like, I'm not saying like be mean to
So,
her. You know me, I'm always like forgive. I do believe in that sort of
yeah.
therapeutic spiritual practice of just like you forgive. You don't have to forget, but on some level you kind of do to heal yourself. And then you have a right to separate from that parent or that guardian or that figure that just is is in pain and taking it out on everyone else around them. You have a right to end a relationship with your partner that is called, there is a choice. That's what I'm saying. Like there is a choice, Lubna. Like it's hard, but I do believe, you know,
Okay, let's
yeah,
talk
that's why
then
I keep saying
about
that because I know what you mean in terms of like people in the Middle East or af like I know what you're saying, but you know
mm-mm,
me, I'm always like, but there's that one person who got out, and that's like the catalyst. Some,
yeah.
and it's
Oh,
and
absolutely.
and some of those people get out and they kill, but that inspired like it's heavy shit, but it's like I cannot subscribe personally. This is not towards you, just in general, like, oh, they don't have a choice. Like we are here because of the choices those people made, Lubna.
Yeah. Oh,
Live in a
absolutely.
liberal
Okay.
democracy to be able to
Let's
say what I'm saying
yeah.
publicly without any consequences. And yes, you and I both have we have parents who are educated, knowledgeable, who are not like, we can be free and they're not going to send our brothers to kill us, any of this crazy nonsense. So we also
Yeah.
have a lot of privilege. There is privilege. We can talk about that as well. But anyway, what were you going to say?
No, fascinating. A lot of good points. What I wanted to talk about in particular, and I think you would love this,
Okay, yeah.
is about selflessness and the culture of martyrdom, especially an altruism that is pushed on women in particular in
Yeah.
different cultures and societies, that a good mother, a good wife, a good daughter, it's always, giving, nurturing,
Hmm.
putting others first, selfless, um, altruistic. While you don't see these terms and adjectives being describing the good father or the good son,
Yeah.
or so there's something about allowing ourselves to erode under the us as women under the pressures of life and the abuse of others and the disrespect and the indignification and you name it. The list goes on because that's the higher good. That's the ultimate, you know, the good daughter vision or the good mother kind of archetype that we should aspire to. And there is something so dangerous and damaging in this mythology that is perpetuated throughout, whether it's in educational systems, I would argue in psychology, in modern science, in psychology, you hear a lot about that, the mothering and how a good mother and there's that archetype again. And then obviously in religions, the submissive, compliant, obedient wife, daughter, da 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 da, and so on. So
Hmm.
when back to your what you talked about the ability to cut off toxic abusive relationships in family and how that's so frowned upon, it's almost such a taboo that
Oh,
even if it
yeah.
happens people don't talk about it at all because they want it to go unnoticed, although they've been in, living through the abuse for years and they're the children, those are the parents, the power dynamic is not the same. There is something about the dominant cultures we live in, across the world, I would say, where the hierarchy of power is always, they're always trying to keep it the way it is, whether it's the parent, the child, the state, the citizen, the man, the woman, you name it. They want always whoever at the other end with less power to continue to be obedient, compliant, oppressed, submissive. Hence, you don't cut off the abuser. You don't go no contact. You don't do these things, you know?
Hmm.
Um, because and I would now the layer of the gender, which is basically what we just talked about, how women in particular are fed these stereotypes and archetypes in their head, about what a good woman looks like and how she behaves. And that's all about obedience and so there's such tension between self-preservation, survival, which is very instinctive, I would argue,
Yeah.
extremely instinctive, and this externally fed image of what we need to be. And the two are at war when someone is living through an abusive relationship, whether it's a partner or a family member, and then the choice to exit or cut off is when I think they they resolve that tension and self-preservation wins.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
but
survival
to
instinct. Yeah, like the survival
survival. But
instinct.
for someone to realize that they are so sacred and divine in their own essence because they are the daughter of the divine, they are the son of the divine,
Yeah.
they're the child of the divine, to reach that level of realization and self-love, to favor and to choose oneself over the abuser and all that social packaging that comes with the abuser takes a lot.
Yeah, yeah. It's not easy. They
Um,
say in the case of abuse, like I was reading somewhere that it takes like 7 times for a woman to leave, like an abuser, for one example.
And that's why the highest rate of homicide, well, femicide, murder, domestic violence is by usually the male partners. They're men that know the woman. They're
Oh yeah,
usually
yeah.
husbands,
Both rape,
ex-husbands.
assault, it's all some
Yeah, it's always why the
relative,
question
it's
always and
husband.
and they ask the question, why did she stick around? That's always the question, like because it doesn't happen overnight. It's usually
Yeah.
years
For
or
sure.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like to reach that point for one to realize I don't deserve this because I am part of the divine. I am sacred. I carry a soul and the soul is divine and sacred. There's a level of spirituality, enlightenment, self-love, not in the, commercialized sense,
Yeah.
truly to love oneself as an extension of the divine. If one is actually spiritual or religious, to understand that connection, that you would not want be to receive any of that darkness.
Right.
Yeah, it's I mean, well, going back to martyrdom and um selflessness.
Yeah.
And I remember our last conversation, you said that. You said, I want women to be more selfish.
100%.
Yeah, but even with that term, I wonder if you want to use that term because you know how selfish has such a negative connotation.
But
And
sorry,
do you
go.
think it is a negative word,
No,
selfish?
I don't. I don't anymore. I have
Okay.
a neutral position. It's how what you do with that selfishness that can either make it good or bad. It is a neutral term.
What
Women,
is another
oh,
term we can use instead of selfish, you think?
so you do you feel like it has a negative connotation? I
I
think
do
we need to
think
take back the word. That's what I feel. Like I
you
feel,
want to take back the word.
yeah, I
Okay.
do. I want like I'm gonna write like a book about women being selfish because I think about it in the context of men where I think men are often in the world we live in are allowed to be more ego driven, right? They run on ego in a way that women don't. That's just a fact. We have both of that, but men predominantly in patriarchy in the world we live in today run more on their ego, right?
Yeah.
And ego is totally supported or like selfishness is a part of that ego, you know? And so I often feel like men are very good at being selfish. Even good men
Oh,
are always going to do
absolutely.
what's in their best interest. They're incredibly self-interested like beings. And I want women to do that as well. We can learn from men, you know, we don't have to demonize them all the time. I think this is a way in which we can learn from men
Yeah.
and be like, oh, okay, that's what you're gonna do. Well, I'm gonna do this. Like, that's a good point. You want that. Well, I want this. And if we cannot come to the same sort of place with this, then let's go our separate ways, or or it doesn't even have to be that. I'm just saying, like, I
Mm-mm.
want women to be selfish. I want, this is why I'm such a, you know, when we talk about the social pressure to be a mother, right? That's everywhere. That's just in every society,
Yeah.
right? Often. And now that there is this sort of movement, or I don't know if it's a movement, that there are more women I see, you know, living in the New York area, seeing it online, seeing in media, where they're being very vocal about wanting to be child free.
Mm.
Why I love that. As someone who plans to be a mother, cannot wait to be a mother, loves children, like I love those women because
Oh,
I love
absolutely.
all women who go against the grain, Lubna, who are being told, no, you don't have a choice. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that. We'll do that. And they're like, fuck you. Fuck you. I do like that. They're just saying, I fucking do have a choice. And that's a very spiritual, going back, they know they are connected to God, whether they realize it or not. They are connected to divine. They're connected to their self, their spirit, and their soul. And they know this isn't adding up.
Mm-mm.
He can do it. Why can't I? Right?
Yeah.
Even saw
Yeah.
those discrepancies as a kid. Like, this is where my feminism started. It always starts in the home, right? Like, and it's so whatever, right? This is not a serious example, but it tells you and it bleeds into everything else. Like, I was such a annoying little feminist in the home. I know everyone was like, oh my God, here goes Hawa. And I would see discrepancies everywhere. And it really pissed me off because in
Yeah.
Somali culture, the women cook and clean,
Of course.
right? And my dad, I love my dad, but I've never seen him. I saw him maybe clean once, and that's my mom was like Somalia for 3 weeks or something. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in a home like I've never seen my brothers or my dad like clean the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that. Like I just grew up when I was a kid because I grew up in a multi-generational home. I grew up with my aunt. My aunts lived with me. I had a lot of people living in my, which was beautiful because of the war. And so I grew up in this like random like town, white affluent town outside of New York, and we're just this like multicultural, multi-generational home. And it just was,
Yeah.
I look back, I'm like, what the fuck? But anyway, it's beautiful. So I was raised by my aunts. They lived with us. They went through the same high school I went to, as my siblings did, and my cousin did as well. So anyway, growing up, like, what did I see? All the women in the kitchen, all the women cleaning on Saturday. And then when I was of age, I had to help. And I would always like like vacuuming, like why the hell does he get to
Why
sit
is he
here
not?
and do nothing? What the hell is this shit? Like just a bitching and moaning. Like, why do I have to feed daddy first? Like all like subtle things I would see, like this doesn't add up. And I was always bitching and moaning, bitching and moaning. Um, like pat on the back, like young little feminist Hall being like, this
And
isn't
pat
right.
on the back,
I'm seeing,
100%.
I'm
Yeah.
just seeing things that aren't fair. I'm not
Yeah.
asking them to let me sit and do nothing. And then the guilt, if I don't want to clean, that's another thing, the guilt that I had if I'm not helping with
Mm,
the house. Like, my brothers have no guilt. They
at
feel
all.
nothing. I mean, they're helpful, but I'm just saying, like, it's different now. But, like, I could tell. And it wasn't me. That's selfish. That's an example of selfishness. It's like, you see your mom, you see all this women in the house, and what are you doing? Selfish. But they're not, they're just like in La La Land. They're like, well, if you asked, and I know that if we asked, they would do it. It wasn't like,
But the point is not
but that's
asking or
not
not
the
asking.
point.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
point is
So
this
it's
is the communal space. This is for all of us.
right.
Why anything that serves others is not automatically kind of on their radar in a way, you
Exactly. And
know?
I can't even be mad because they're conditioned that way. Like we're conditioned in
Yeah.
another way and they're conditioned in that way. But that way is not fair. So that's why for
Yeah.
me, I'm like, I love child-free women. I love it. I'm like, don't have kids. Don't get married if you don't want, like, because they're
100%.
so, or have kids, like do whatever you want. Like stay at home. Don't stay at home. Start your own business. Like I just want women to recognize at the end of the day, Lubna, if you're in America and it's a 20, it's 2025, we are the luckiest generation of women in like 10, 20,000 years, if I'm being honest with you right now.
Oh,
Like
100%.
that to me, like
No
I
one is calling us witches and like,
yeah, burn it
burning us
yet,
at the
not
stake.
yet. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. But yeah, so for me, it's yeah, like, but sorry, yeah, I'm just like ranting, but it's just like,
No, no, it makes sense, but like I guess the back to the point, like we need women to be more selfish.
yes, I want them selfish in every, like,
I
even
want
if
us
it's
to use a
like,
different word.
yeah,
Let's
okay, fine.
let's
I
figure
love
out
it. I'm just like,
because
no, these dudes
from a
are running
marketing,
around.
branding,
I want
yes,
women to
I
ghost people, ghost jobs, quit, and don't tell anyone. I'm like, I want chaos with women. I am on a different page. So what other word? I'm on an extreme. Like, I just want them to just be insane. Like, but what is
yeah.
insane? But anyway, okay. So why is
What
it
other
triggering
word?
for you? Why is it so? That's another thing. Like, what is wrong with being selfish? Like, if okay, to me, bad selfish is if like you're a parent and you're like, I don't want to be a parent anymore. Like, you kids can fend for yourself. So I can go partying all the time or
I don't know, the way I think
that's
about
like
self
not
the way
normal.
I'm thinking about selfish is your interests only, and no one else's interests figures into the calculation or the thinking at all.
Okay, fair.
And I'm trying to, what I would love for women is basically their interests, other people's interests, they consider it, but depending on the cost benefit, blah, 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 they pursue their own interests. If there's not much harm to others,
Yes, of
like,
course, I agree. That's the same.
So,
That's how I believe too. Yeah, and
but
that
I think, yeah, when I think of selfish people, don't like really, it doesn't matter what the cost
sure.
is of their interests. They're gonna pursue their interests. So I'm trying to just go for a word where um self-serving is equally, I guess,
Self-serving or just being self-interested, you know?
self-interested.
Yeah,
Here we
like to
go.
be
I love that.
self-interested, you have to be self-interested. You have to have
Oh, 100%.
boundaries. You have to like, stick to it, right? And I think,
And boundaries is another aspect of, I guess it facilitates or enables choice in a way. Um, because if it's very clear what your territory is of decision making and what others is, then you're able to navigate your world more easily. But at least from my experience, and we talked about that, but like there are some homes and families and people where they don't understand boundaries at
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah,
And some cultures actually enable that, as in, I'm thinking of specific like North African culture that
yeah,
I've been to recently.
yeah,
And it's not just actually, I thought is like one particular family who has an issue. And I'm a new mom, relatively new. My kid is like now 7, 8 months old.
hmm
So in that culture, there's like immediate family members that will give advice, unsolicited advice about everything the kid is doing and not doing, and me doing and not doing constantly. But aside from that, I even noticed like people who are not family members, like literally
yeah.
friends of this family would show up and they were like, "Oh, give me the kids," and they take the kids, my kids, on their lap, and they're like, "Oh, did you give him this? Oh, did he feed? Oh, by the way, you can give him this. Oh, da da da," and they go on and on and on. But it's not just about the kid. Like pretty much everything in their space, they're constantly giving unsolicited advice. It's so intrusive.
Are
Like it's
these women
absolutely
mostly? Who's giving the unsolicited advice that are not family?
women, men.
Oh, interesting.
I genuinely think, and I had a conversation with my husband
Yeah.
because he comes from that culture. I love how I'm being like so cryptic about it. Like it's Algeria. Like we know that. Okay. So anyways,
Yeah,
we
I think you
talked about
mentioned it in the last episode too, but
yeah, I went all the way with it, but now I'm like,
yeah,
oh, let's
you're,
euphemize here.
I was,
Um, so I spoke with him and he's like, yeah, it's a cultural thing. Because like, he kept on saying it's a, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, observe how people behave everywhere. Like, and it's true. Even like
oh,
the taxi driver. We were in the cab and it's Amir and I. We barely know this man, right? He's a cab driver.
yeah,
And he's like all of a sudden telling Amir because we had to stop by the house and Amir needed to get some papers because we're processing some, papers for at the administration and this guy tells Amir, he's like, "Yeah, let your wife go down here and you can go get the papers and she can come." Like he's just giving him orders. And I'm like, this is so bizarre, like that he feels comfortable telling you what your wife should do. But it's
you're
literally
not even
anything.
there. Was he
Yeah, no,
kind of like you weren't even there?
no,
Like,
I was there.
well, no, was it like sexist? Like he was just telling,
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
yeah,
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 like not even
absolutely,
acknowledging
absolutely.
like that you're an entity or like
Oh, no,
a human being.
100%.
It was like your thing can do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, it's laughable
Yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
how insanely stuck in
Sexist?
time they
Yeah.
are and
Yeah.
sexist. Oh, absolutely to the core, to the core. But I mean, I'm talking about boundaries because I feel if one does not understand where their space starts and others end and vice versa, like how can you make decisions properly? Maybe I'm going now into a different kind
No,
of
no, no. I want to
conversation.
say something, but yeah, you go
Yeah,
finish.
but as we're talking about s self-interested choices and so what is me and what is the other? I think at the very first stage of that, we need to understand boundaries. And then from there, people can make decisions that affect them versus affecting others.
Yeah.
And I would argue some cultures, which I've never believed in that, but apparently it's a thing, some cultures that the boundaries are so fluid between, I guess, the individual and the collective that anyone in the public, when you're in the public space, it's free for all. you know?
That's great. That's, I shouldn't say. That's very interesting. I'm like, oh, whatever. But like, no, I agree. But in that case, like connecting it to choice, like it's hard. It is gonna be harder for you, right? To the social consequences. So again, I believe there's still a choice, but then it goes back to the fact that there's still social consequences if were you were to say, please stop talking, or hey,
But here's
I'm
the
really
deal.
not
I
gonna show
don't,
you my baby. I'm gonna go to my room right now because you're all too much. Like, yeah, you can't be but I don't know. It goes back to what I was saying, Lubna. There always is the catalyst. There's that one person because everyone just allows, like, fundamentally, like my whole issue
true.
with is that we as a human right, we have free will and choice. Like that is like law,
Foundational.
you know?
Yeah.
And then but then we're born into these societies, some much more worse than others, that make us forget that, right? And it deliberately do that. We don't even consciously realize it anymore, but that is what happens in society and state and tribes and all this type of stuff is how do we create social control, in my personal opinion. I don't see it as cohesion anymore. I think a lot of it is just control. And you know, but I just always am that I'm like, it's so funny. I feel like this conversation is so showing how explicitly American I am. I'm like, we have choice, like free will, it's like the pursuit of happiness. Like, I'm like, no, you can't, it's just so fucking, which is not a thing, but I'm just laughing at how I'm like,
No, it's
can't, like,
cute. Yes, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yes,
do
you
have that
can.
philosophical, spiritual perspective on it. I do like, you know,
Mm,
America was kind of built on that, like we can continue, for example, to keep paying taxes to this like useless king who we don't have any representation, we don't get to decide our fates. And there's obviously, a lot of bad that came with that, right? Like the slave, I'm not
mm,
denying the history of the United States, but just that concept, that that like the fact that these men, like there is something really profound who were enlightened thinkers who said, we don't have to live like this anymore. We don't have to, and they were rich as hell, many of them. They still realized that they weren't free. Like they were men
mm.
they were educated men, they were men of intellect, they were owned property, right? Like these were men who were at the top of society within the pre United States of America, who still ultimately realized like this is like we are
It's
in,
not gonna last, like
it's
if
not
they
enough.
don't
And
create
also,
protection.
but it's also just like we don't have to live like this. Like that's my whole choice to me is like I don't have to live like this. And I've always been the type of person who's like, there's one, I'm going to keep saying it. There is that one, it takes one fucking person, one woman to say, I don't want to do this anymore. One woman to say, I'm not wearing the burqa, you know?
Mm,
And yeah, she could die. I'm not denying that. But that, opens up, think about all the ideas you have that you didn't have 30 years ago.
yeah,
Think about that. Someone told you, someone inspired you, someone said, well, that
yeah,
you thought you didn't have choice, but you did.
yeah.
I think you're like the embodiment of choice, Lubna, in many ways, like of profound
Oh,
choice.
me personally?
Yeah. I know your family
Oh, say
is religious.
more. Okay, now we're
Um,
talking.
but yeah, just like you grew up in a conservative society. I know your family was chill, like they weren't ever going to hold you
Mm,
back, especially when it came to education or career opportunities. But still, like social conditioning, we talk about this, especially now that you're a mother, of like, you can teach your child, we can teach any children we have as much as we can, but the culture that they're born and raised into, at a certain point, they're so influenced by their peers, right? I'm a product
oh,
of that. You're a product, like, we're all a product.
yeah,
And you still ultimately recognize if I stay here, I'm not going to be able to achieve the goals that I have.
yeah.
Like, and obviously
And it came at a cost.
it came
So
at a
I
huge, but the
guess,
sacrifice, there's always, and that's an episode I want us to talk about is sacrifice. That's like something I've been thinking a lot about. Like,
mm,
you want something, there's sacrifice. I do think like there's always a big thing. I'm not saying every element, but I'm saying
sure,
you want
true.
if something connected to your life purpose or you have this innate desire for something more that is a huge risk, it often requires some sacrifice. And that sacrifice, I'm not saying killing, I think sacrifice can be a lot of things. I'm not,
I love how your mind
I'm
even
such a
went
like,
there.
yeah, I
Yeah,
know, I'm so
you're like
crazy. Like I'm just like, I don't know why. Like,
Abrahamic,
yeah,
Ishmael,
yeah, right.
we were like, you're like, no, not killing.
Yeah, there's a
Let's keep
risk.
it chill
Yeah,
here.
I know. I'm just like not. I don't know what the fuck. Like, yeah, I'm just reading too many ancient texts right now and like history. Right, I need to chill out. But it's something I think a lot about, like the building of a country,
Uh,
creating a business.
yeah,
you sacrifice sleep, you sacrifice money, you sacrifice time with your family, your friends. Like, it doesn't have to be this big thing that I'm implying it is. But to me,
Yeah.
back to you, I think you're embodiment of a woman in the Middle East being conditioned in this environment. You were around it, you saw it. And yeah, you were technically a fly on the wall, as you say, but you still were like, that conditioning is still there in some ways, right? Like that influence is still
Oh,
there.
absolutely.
And you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
said, you had a cushy job from what you told me when you were in Doha, but Doha, there's a wall. You knew that there was a wall for you. You knew, and you could have stuck it out. And I know there were all these other
Mm,
like residential, but still, like you could have stuck it out, but you wanted more for yourself. And you took a huge hit, right? Like you gave up that big job.
yeah,
You moved to New
absolutely,
York.
honestly.
You were in London. Like you did all of these things, right? With
Yeah.
not the best citizenship at the time, which is also another amazing thing. Wait, I'm so right about this with you. Like, no, just like
I love
you,
how this is
okay,
unfolding.
to our viewers, whoever they may be, you were a fucking Syrian national. Okay, it was the worst fucking passport to have. The
True.
worst. Literally one of the worst passports to have. Still is, I think. It might be a little bit better, but still fucking horrible.
Oh my God, it
This
was such a
chick was
nightmare.
like, I'm going to New York. I'll figure the fuck out. Like you figured it out. Like you were in London.
And then the travel ban came
And
out.
the travel
Remember the
ban,
first
and then
travel
fucking
ban?
Trump like was like, yup. Also, yeah, that
All
shit.
Syrians
Yeah, it
out.
just was like everything. I was like, is this girl gonna catch a fucking break? Like in my head. But you didn't give up, Lubna. Wallahi, like you didn't give up. You didn't see a wall. You made a choice. You believed and you accomplished it.
Mm,
Now you have a green card. Now you're a French citizen. Now your
mm,
your world is opening up in many ways for you in terms of your opportunities to travel, to work,
true.
whatever it may be. You fucking did that. You didn't see even if you were fearful or it was scary or it was stressful, and I know it was because I know you, but like
Mm.
you did it, Lubna. I am so
Oh,
what a
Hawa.
wonderful example. My American ad, like, welcome to America. You deserve to be an American. So you know what I'm saying?
Merci,
Like,
merci. Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
you grew up in the Middle East and you figured it out. And yeah, you had class privilege, you had whatever, you had a family support, whatever the fuck.
There was privilege.
But
There's a
there
lot
was,
of
of
privilege
course,
that
privilege.
cushioned and enabled all of
I'm
that
not
because
denying that,
that's
but you
all.
still did it, Lubna. There are other people who could have been in your
Yeah.
situation who couldn't have done. I
Yeah.
mean, family members, you know what I'm saying? Like you figured it out at a huge cost, a huge amount of
Oh, huge
emotional,
cost, like career. My
stress,
career took a
career.
hit for a
Yeah.
while.
And you did it. And so I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, that's why I'm like always going to be a bit of a like spiritual woo hippie about this. I'm like, okay, you can be from fucking Afghanistan. Like, it's not easy. I'm not
It's
here.
not easy. It's not easy. But
I'm not naive, but like even in Iran, those girls a couple years ago were taking off their hijab. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
that's a risk. And they did it. And now women don't have to wear the hijab in the same way that they did in Tehran. It's not easy, but
Yeah.
it's happening. The catalyst, like it's happening. The tension, right? It's like the dialectic of the contradiction of the opposing forces, kind of the tension has to happen for some other new option that, ideally is better to
It's just, I
happen.
mean, I'm
So choice
listening to
is
you.
real.
Yeah.
Choice is there. We were born with free will. You have a choice every single day. I'm saying something extreme. I don't, there were always people who like even I'm inspired by a lot of like the slave rebellions in the
Mm,
South that existed there was always someone who's like, I'm not fucking, and that's just one person who opens up the floodgates for others, but someone's got to do it, is how I feel. And that's kind of
yeah.
my stance on
It's
choice.
just I mean, as I'm listening to you, it just saddens me that this is still needed on a very for topics or things. Let me rephrase that.
Sure.
It saddens me that the rebellion and the resistance is still needed to that level, and the sacrifice is still needed to that level in today's world for women to make for about things that really are so menial and they don't
Yeah,
matter in
I
the
agree.
larger scheme of things, like clothing and the body. Like there, this is stupid, honestly. But we're
But it
still
goes back to what
discussing
you're
that.
saying. But it goes back to that, like the law. I don't think those women, I'm sorry. Not sorry. I am never gonna buy that some girl in America wearing a burqa or a niqab or whatever the fuck. It, I'm not saying she can believe whatever she wants, and it's her life and it's her choice. So at the end of the day, but you cannot sit here and tell me that she would do that if there wasn't an expectation from her family.
Mm-mm.
You know,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
pressure, this sort of cultural pressure, because you're in the United States of America. You are not in Yemen. You are not in Somalia. Why are you wearing this? Why don't you want to be a participant in society?
Yeah,
Right?
because on some level it's
It's because,
rendering oneself invisible. Like you're hiding yourself. It's
yeah,
it's hiding the self. The
right.
body is part of the self, and it's hiding the self in public spaces. So what does that really mean? To what extent you are seen fully and
You're
you
not.
are a participant? You're not. And but it just saddens me that that's the
Yeah,
level of conversation that we're still having. I mean, when people talk about like equal pay, for example, the wages, or even reproductive rights to some extent
yeah.
is very deeply disturbing, but still dealing with the body, right? But one would argue it's more impactful or consequential because it's having a baby, bringing life, like there's some expanding the population. But when you're talking about hiding your hair or covering part of your eye or your arm as a woman, because, you know, certain schools of thoughts in Islam say that or
Yeah.
this, I'm like, what are we talking about? What is this? What are you
I
doing?
think this
Like
is
as
like
a
a devolve. Like I think we're kind of not evolved. And I mean, listen, it's the same thing with Christian groups in the United States. Like
Absolutely. Any
ultra
like
religious. I just think, Lubna, like we are in the age of ignorance. Like there is this mass level right now. Yeah, like this resurgence of like conservatism in general, and because I would argue that the Middle East, yeah, there's tension, but like in the Middle East, I when I speak about the Middle East, I should clarify like Khaliji countries, like the
mm,
Emirates, Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar, like where they're more economically developed, right? Like these are
mm-mm.
economically sophisticated places. You don't have women wearing young women, from my understanding, wearing the niqab as much as you do in Somalia now,
Oh,
or that
absolutely.
sort of exported this crap to other poor Muslim countries. But then in the United States, it's like, and I think we should talk about like good choice and bad choice because like
Mm.
these people are
What
these
is bad
women
choice?
wearing the niqab, wearing the burqa, and you're fucking in Brooklyn and you're in the United States of America. And if anyone watches this and they give me shit about it, I'm going to ask you where in the Quran, where in any Islamic teachings is it required to cover your face? Am I wrong? Like, I
Mm.
understand the argument of the hijab, but I do not understand the religious argument, like from a requirement perspective, to wear that garb. Is there?
Well, I don't know, maybe they're gonna send us now emails with
Good,
a
I
lot
hope
of
you fucking do. Let's go. It's still
sources.
stupid as shit. You're never gonna catch
Let's
me.
go,
You're
let's
never
go.
gonna catch me defending that shit. And when you met me and I was a super duper feminist, um, I'm still a feminist. I would never say I'm not, but like I think we have to question, it goes back to choice. Okay, I remember vividly this conversation that we had with other woman that I was friends with who was Iraqi, but grew up in Germany.
Yeah.
And then you grew up in Doha. And I was like, I vividly remember this. I don't know if we were out, I don't know where we were. Maybe we were on the Lower East Side. And I was just talking to you guys. And I was like, well, the burqa is like, I support the burqa and the niqab because it's like they choose to. And I want all women to like their choices to be respected. And both of you were like, no, girl, you have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean we have to respect women's choices? And it's like, some choices are perpetuating the patriarchy.
Exactly.
And
So
I don't want the
when it's
patriarchy.
ill-informed, is it a good choice? That's the question. So what is a bad choice? I would say
Yeah, it's a
a
bit.
bad choice is a choice that is not well informed. It's ill-informed. The sources, the
Yes.
information
Yes.
that helped you
Agreed.
make that decision is wrong. The information is inaccurate, falsified. There's something wrong in all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's rooted in ignorance. It's an ignorance.
Rooted in
Yes.
ignorance.
Yes. That's a
And
bad choice
I
for me.
don't, I personally don't want to like use the word ignorance as a dismissive, like they're just ignorant. End of story. Ignorance comes from a place. Ignorance is being asleep, right? Not
Yes.
being the
Lacking
sources of
knowledge,
inform.
lacking
Yes,
the right knowledge to make, yeah, a good
but
choice.
I think both of us would agree information's out there, knowledge is out there. It's no
Yes.
longer inaccessible. In
Yes. Agreed.
today's world, everyone has access. You know, ev the
Agreed.
internet has it all. So ignorance come from laziness, probably.
Yes.
Comes from like everyone can be well informed. It's just ill-informed decisions, I guess, are bad decisions. Um, and yeah, I'm just thinking like on that note, because whether it's niqab, burqa, any like even if we want to expand this conversation to things beyond the clothing of women, which irritates me because I feel a lot of no, right? Like a lot
No,
of
it kills
conversations
me. I
boil
mean,
down.
I just
Like
really
there's so
want,
much we can talk more
there's
about.
so much.
Again,
Yeah. And like,
financial independence and
yeah,
financial independence. Like what does it look and what does it mean for women? And
we can talk
why
about that too. I mean, like, we can talk about
yeah, but I'm saying like more rhetorically, but
that.
like because I'm thinking as an example, yes, we're all more or less when we're first out of college, you get your first job. Pretty much a lot of women around the world, I'm generalizing a lot here, but they could be financially independent. But something happens when they get married. And it happened to me, it happened to a lot of women that there is something about the dynamics,
Yeah.
the financial dynamics of your life, it changes, especially when you have children
Yeah.
and you are physically unable to work for a while and that your career takes a hit. Everyone knows that. Then depends on the country you're in. Either you get maternity leave that is decent, or you're just off work for 6 weeks and then you have to be back on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Um, and then if you don't do that, then your career again is probably going to take a hit. Just a recent conversation with a very close family member that I was working on a project for that family member related to his properties. He's an older man from the Middle East and quite traditional culturally, not religious at all. But interestingly enough, he called me and he's like, "Oh, I was thinking of asking so and so to come in, a man, to come in and help with the project, and maybe you can hand over the project, because now you're a mother, and I'm sure that, and you're married, you're a mother that, motherhood takes a lot of your time, and you're married, and it's maybe more difficult for you to fly in and oversee the work, and so it's just, to me, it was fu almost again laughable that that could be used against me. And my response was that, yeah, sure, let him step in. Actually, that would help a lot. I need the help. But that has nothing to do with me being married or a mother. It's like as if I have a job. If I have a job, I do the work.
Yeah.
But
That's
it made me
the thing.
pause. It made me pause. It's not the first time. I've heard that multiple times, not in these very direct kind of completely unfiltered terms, but the idea is that your priorities have shifted. That's automatically the assumption, and society treats you as such. Hence, my income and my financial independence suffers as
Yeah.
a result. And I had this conversation with my husband. I was like, imagine someone telling you now that you have they're like, oh, now you're a father, you're married,
Yeah. Your
your
husband.
priority, I think you should give the work to someone else. It's such a bizarre thing to say to a man that you think it's okay to tell me that. Um, but a lot, actually, the way employment is designed assumes a lot of that.
Yeah.
That, yeah,
I mean,
as
even in
new
the United
mothers.
States, women talk about
Sure,
how, like, the moment I had a kid, I knew that I wouldn't be able to have, it would be a lot harder for me to move up the corporate ladder, that I was pretty much going to
100%.
be staying where I was, and that was that, right? And I think people are actively trying to change that, but I think men in our age group are still, I don't think they're all there. I think that's the problem. That's something, this is separate, but it's interesting. It's something my sister and I talk a lot about. It's like, you know, our generation of women, almost everyone works. Women are equally as ambitious, right? Even at the corporate professional level, right? And I think, but I don't think men have connected that yet, even though they're men of our peers.
They still think in the terms
Yeah,
of
not as extreme as their fathers or even whatever, but like you can just tell like they and I think they're trying. Their brains are like still like, like trying to like, oh yeah, 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 true. My mom worked for a bit too. But most of these women at that class level, a lot of their moms didn't work, which is fine. They were stay-at-home
true.
moms, which
It's
is
a class
fine.
thing as
There
well.
is a class
Yeah.
element to it, but you can just tell they're like, oh yeah, 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 like, but you can't tell me they don't clock if you're a mom and if that doesn't hurt, like unless you have a woman professional, right? A
Mm,
woman boss, I'm sorry. But
yeah.
even they can be really hard on you. That's a separate conversation anyway.
Because yeah, they live the hard days and
Yeah, they suffer
why
so
dare you live the easier kind of version of it. But
right.
all of this I'm sharing all of it, I guess, back to financial independence and what it how it helps with creating the enabling environment for well-informed choices.
Yes, of course.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
yeah,
course.
and I think it's
My
at the core
choices,
of it.
yeah, I like my attitude is like I'm a single woman, you know what I mean? I can do whatever I want. Like, like it's not that I can do whatever I want. I still very am connected to my parents and my friends, and I'm always trying to make sure that I'm like but yeah, I think I have more of a stronger opinion on this at this
Mm.
phase in my life because I am not a mother, I am not a wife.
And
Um,
you're not financially dependent on
and I'm not
anyone.
financially dependent on anyone. So it is a different circumstance for me. And I'm sure, say I meet someone tomorrow, get married in a year or two or whatever, and I don't want to work, or I do want to ultimately like as I'm sure I've told you, like if I can, God willing, like it would be very important to me to at least take a year off now that I'm going to be an older but hot mom. But like you know what I mean? But like I would like to take a year if I can have the support of my partner,
Yeah,
because I've always wanted to be a mom, but I've thought about there's tension internally.
there's a tension.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was like, oh, like because I still think it as being dependent on a man, but that's not a man. Like that's your family. Like your
yeah,
husband is your
yeah.
family. He's not a man. You're not dependent on a man. Like you help each other. Like it's
Right. It's
like
like,
having to transition out of and that's my own shit, but it's like transitioning to that recognition of it's not that you're dependent on him or any, particularly if you have a good marriage and you respect your husband and it's fine. Like
yeah.
but side note, I mean, thinking of my non-existent husband and my non-existent children right now, I do think, like, what does that look like? And I have this internal fear, Lubna. Like,
Yeah,
even though it would be like, okay, this is great. Like, I don't really want that grind life anymore,
yeah,
but I do want to work and having my own money is incredibly important to me.
yeah,
So there's tension. You're right. I mean, the choice is but I'm not in that phase, right? Whereas you're in that, like, not phase, but you're in a different life moment in your life that I think you have a different perspective. Like, it makes sense, is what I'm saying. Because I've
yeah.
definitely
It made me pause for a second
how,
because
like, yeah,
yeah, because
critical I
as I
am.
was reading, preparing for our conversation, I came across that the importance of financial independence,
Yeah.
and I thought, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It opens up the world if you can sort of finance all of your decisions versus you have to run it by someone else
Yeah.
because they're keeping, the books.
It goes
Um,
back to what you're saying about abuse, too. Like, or people who just want to amicably leave a relationship,
yeah.
right? And if you don't have, yeah, it's complicated. I still fundamentally stand by my personal belief that the choice is still there. It might take you a little bit longer. You might have to suffer. It goes back to the sacrifice, but it
No,
will.
I agree with
Yeah.
you. I think
Not
I love
easy.
where we're concluding in a way.
Yeah.
Choice is there. There's a cost. Either you're willing to take the cost or not, but choices in principle need to be well informed. We don't do lazy work, right? No ignorant choices.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess with that, until next time, what do we say, Hawa?
Stay
Stay
searching
searching,
and stay unscripted.
unscripted.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And that's a wrap on this week's Unscripted conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to Unscripted with Lubna and Hawa wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. We'll be back with a brand new one next Wednesday. Until then, keep it unfiltered, unapologetic, and unscripted.